Good morning, QC. How are you today? Ready to make some epic tones?
It's no secret that I love the Quad Cortex, but it definitely wasn't love at first sight. It's been a slow burn over the past 3 months, and I've definitely had to put work into our relationship in order to get it in a good place. In order to determine whether the Quad Cortex is in fact right for you, I want to share the story of my relationship with the unit. The good, the bad, and the ugly. I first posted about the Quad Cortex on April 14th of 2023. I had never owned an all-in-one unit like a Kemper or a Helix, and my experience with them was pretty minimal. I've only ever just plugged in and gone with whatever people set it up as. I was pretty excited to get going with it, and I wanted to learn it as quickly as possible. I thought to myself, hey, I'm really good with tone. I'm sure I'll learn this thing no problem. The night before a gig, I opened it up. I spent 2 hours with the unit, and this is what I was able to come up with. The tone was fine, but it definitely was not up to my usual standard. And to my surprise, most of the comments on this video weren't negative in regards to the sound of the guitar. It was more in regards to the order of my effects. I had no idea so many of you had very strong opinions about where the delay and the reverb should be in the chain. So I've now learned my lesson. Unless you put the delay and the reverb after your amps, you will forever get comments about that in the Quad Cortex community. Even though you don't have to do it that way. I'd say for just 2 hours with the unit, it was pretty good, and it was definitely encouraging to me because if this was the bottom, the very base level tone I was gonna get, then the potential for this thing to sound fantastic was huge. 2 weeks into using the Quad Cortex, I found my tone took a huge leap. So much so that I said, I wonder if this thing sounds as good as my pedal board. So I did the thing where I made a shootout, and I put the Quad Cortex with no external captures of amps or pedals or anything, just the stock stuff, up against my tried and true pedal board setup. And I'll cut to the chase. I thought the pedal board sounded better still, but the Quad Cortex was pretty impressive.
My first time playing a guitar that's not my Telecaster into this thing.
One month into using the Quad Cortex, and I had a very huge attitude shift about it. I started having fun using the unit and found it somewhat inspiring. The user interface is really sleek and fast. It's very intuitive. The stock sounds are actually really good, and especially those neural factory captures, those are fantastic. I use a ton of them in my sound. And my number one gripe in all of my videos about how the reverb sucks. The delays and reverbs were definitely not on par. A lot of tweaking with the reverbs.
Struggle with the reverbs
was ultimately fixed. I found that by stacking reverbs, I could get a really ambient, lush, and thick reverb sound, very reminiscent of a big sky. All that aside, I would say my favorite feature was just how easy it is to make changes in the unit on the fly. So let's say you made a preset and you play through the song in rehearsal, and then the music director says, hey, I actually think I need less reverb on it. So what you're gonna do is you click on the reverb block, you lower the mix, you lower the decay, whatever else needs to be done to get the sound right. You press save, and then you're completely done. Or maybe you now need an effect that you don't have on your current pedal board. Well, it's as easy as pressing some somewhere on the grid, clicking the sound you want, dialing it in, and you're good to go. You don't have to buy any new cables. You don't have to tear apart your pedal board and find a way to fit in a new pedal. It's kind of amazing. Everything you need is right here. Real quick, if you're enjoying this video and you haven't yet already, be sure to subscribe to the channel. There's tons of Quad Cortex videos on here. I'd really appreciate it. Ultimately, the 1 month mark is also where I felt like the Quad Cortex started to sound like me again. I started to play with the capture features and they're impressive. I broke out the old tube amp for the first time in over a year and did the thing. It's ready. Sounds really close, right? The feel was there, the tone was there. Now here comes the main reason I got a Quad Cortex, and that was the ability to capture pedals. I went ahead and tried it out on the drives I have on my current pedal board, and it's pretty indistinguishable. What? Now I have the drive sounds of my pedal board loaded up in my go-to preset on the Quad Cortex. It's made my life really easy. I can just take my template and save as to a new preset and start from there whenever I'm building sounds for a song. It's very efficient and a huge time saver. This feature gives this unit a little extra personal touch. It's not an exact replica of my pedal board, but it really does feel like I have my pedal board with me when I go to gigs, and it fits in this tiny little footprint. It's also cool that you could continue to collect drive pedals, throw them into the Quad Cortex, and just have that many more sounds at your palette without ever having to expand your pedal board, buy new cables, or anything like that. Now, within the last couple weeks, I found a way to up my sound, I'd say another 10-15%, by creatively using the routing flexibility within the Quad Cortex. Kind of reminiscent of a wet-dry rig, I now have my delay and reverbs hitting the same output, but they're isolated from each other, so we don't have those delay trails heading into the reverb. This gives you a clearer sound of what you're actually playing, and you can crank the mix of these effects much higher. It's really cool, and it kind of sounds like a studio. I've taken the Quad Cortex on tour, I've used it at church, I use it at home, and in all circumstances, it's proven to be a really wonderful tool. My favorite things about it are, number one, the sound quality. I think the tones are great, the amps sound great. Number two, the ability to capture amps and effects. It's really cool to have your own sounds with you, and it can make making new presets actually a much faster process. Number three, the ease of using the touchscreen interface. It really takes away the need for a VST or some sort of software to do your editing on. Now that would be great, and I'm excited they're working on that, but you definitely don't need it. It's really fast just making those changes on the Quad Cortex, and it's also really cool that you can turn these like knobs on a pedal. I don't know that that's really that different than using your finger, but it's a cool feature. It's fun, I definitely do it. It feels like I'm working on my pedal board. Finally, I'd say the overall convenience of this unit is pretty hard to beat. So I just bring the Quad Cortex with me in this tiny little hard shell lunch pail case. This certainly beats lugging around a 45-pound pedal board everywhere, which I've done for the last 5 or so years. Does it sound as good? I mean, it's pretty darn close, but I will say this. Every time I've used the Quad Cortex on a gig, a rehearsal, show, whatever, I've gotten compliments on my tone, so it definitely sounds great. Now for the bad, if you're a tone guy like myself, you probably won't be fully in love with the stock presets, so it'll take you some time to get to know what's in the unit and get it into a place where it's sounding like you again. Will it take you 3 months like me? I don't know, but it'll probably take a little more time than you're anticipating. Second, I'm not a huge fan of this app cloud system. The idea of having a cloud backup is really cool, but I don't like that I can't control my files. Like I can't pull my files, I can't monetize them and sell them, and I think that kind of undercuts creators, and I think that's ultimately why you're seeing a lot of people make presets and things for Helix and Fractal and Kemper, but there's very few people doing that for Quad Cortex. Since they're not letting us pull these files and monetize them on our own, the fact that there's no built-in marketplace on the app, it just seems like a miss. It doesn't mean they won't address this, but it is a miss right now for me. Finally, this isn't a critique specific to the Quad Cortex, but I do have this opinion of it at times, and it's that the audio quality is so smooth that it can sound a little compressed. I think relative to the other units like the Kemper and the Helix, this one actually sounds much more open, but it still has moments where I'm playing and I'm like, it's just like a little smooth, like it almost sounds too good to be real, and I think that's a battle you're gonna face with anything truly digital. So is the Quad Cortex worth buying? I'd say if you don't currently have a modeler, it's definitely worth it. Whether you're a pro or a home player, I think there's a lot of use for this for anyone. It's a really inspiring unit. It's easy to learn. There's so many sounds. It's kind of inconceivable to come up with a sound that you couldn't do with this unit. However, if you've had a Helix or a Kemper and you have your tones really dialed in, I'm not sure it's worth the upgrade yet. I do think this unit sounds better, but is it that much better that you should go buy this and get rid of what you have? I'm not sure. I also think the ecosystems of the Helix and the Kemper seem much better because there's so many creators selling presets and captures out there that it's hard to imagine you couldn't find one that sounds as good as the Quad Cortex, or maybe even better if it's really set up correctly. So I want to know, are you thinking about buying a Quad Cortex? Are you pulling the trigger? And if you've already pulled the trigger, how happy are you with it and your thoughts? Leave them in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you're new. If there was a feature in this video that caught your eye, I probably have a video on it that goes into far more detail, so be sure to check that out, and I will catch you next time.